All right, Michigan fans, you're tapped in. This is another edition of Wolverines Daily, bringing you the latest from Ann Arbor every single day. So let's dive in. The Michigan Wolverines are staying hot on the recruiting trail this spring, continuing to build serious momentum in the 2027 class. And if the past couple weeks have any indication, they are just getting started, and Michigan fans, we have every reason to be excited. A few recent commitments have already set the tone with the spring visits rolling in and official visits. With the season right around the corner, this class could really take off in a hurry. Let's start with a name you might not have heard much yet, and that's about to change. The name is Albert Simeon. This is a big-time prospect. We're talking about a 6'3", 270-pound offensive lineman out of Louisiana, a five-star recruit, the number 12 overall player in the 2027 class. Simeon had his first trip to Ann Arbor this past weekend, and by all accounts, he made a strong impression, and the university had a strong impression on him as well. He called the visit, and I quote, "wonderful." It came away with a ton of valuable information. Now Michigan is firmly in the mix to land the official visit, which is a huge step. And here is why this matters even more. Three-star Tristan Dare recently decommitted from Michigan, and now Michigan has a clear need on the offensive line. And as I've said on numerous podcasts, Michigan builds from the inside out. New offensive line coach Jim Harding is wasting no time targeting elite talent to fill that gap, and Simeon is about as elite as it gets. He's had a lot of interest from other big-time programs. Alabama, LSU, Texas A&M, Notre Dame are the heavy hitters that are all involved in the recruiting. But getting him on campus early, that's how you stay in the fight. I've said this the entire time with recruiting. If you can just get them on campus, the campus sells itself. The stadium sells itself, playing in front of 100,000 people, being able to communicate, see the team in practice in spring ball is huge for recruiting. Now, flipping over to the skill side, Quentin Burrell, this is one of Michigan's top overall targets, regardless of the position. Four-star wide receiver, top 100 nationally, and he's been to Ann Arbor multiple times already, including another visit this past weekend. Here's what stood out. He talked about the culture. He said the closeness of the coaching staff, the discipline, the togetherness, that's what's jumped out to him the most. And he quoted, family. The closeness group, family stood out the most. And this disciplined coaching staff is doing just that on the recruiting trail. That's been Michigan's identity, continuing to resonate with recruits. He also liked what he saw on the field, specifically how the offense moves guys around, creates opportunities to make big plays, and that's a big deal for a receiver of his caliber. I said this on another podcast, and I'm going to repeat this. You are going to see Michigan put guys in a lot of different personnel groups. One back, two tight ends. You might see three tight end sets. You might see no backs in the backfield. They are going to try to get their playmakers the ball in space. Looking ahead, Michigan is in a strong position. They've got some competition. Notre Dame and Arizona State are right there. But I've said this, and I'll continue to say this. Michigan is doing exactly what you want to see this time of year. They're getting elite players on campus. They're making strong impressions. They're positioning themselves for a big summer heading into 2027. And Kyle Whittingham just keeps the momentum coming on the recruiting trail, which is huge for Michigan. When you think of the University of Michigan, one thing immediately comes to mind: football, football, football. And of course, you talk about the history, the tradition, playing in front of 100,000 people packed into the big house every Saturday, national championships, the all-time win leader in college football. That is the standard in Ann Arbor. And that's exactly why this latest basketball national championship hits different with Dusty May, former NBA player. And I want to quote this from Jalen Rose, a member of the Fab Five. I thought he said it best. When you're at a place known as a football school, Excellence isn't optional, it's expected across the board. And Michigan just reminded the entire country of that. The Wolverines, as I said, knocked off UConn 69-63 to capture the first national title since 1989, bringing the program full circle from the Fab 5 days until the current era now. And this wasn't just a championship run, this was a dominant run through the NCAA tournament. Michigan finished 37-3, 19-1 in Big Ten play, which was a conference record, the most wins in program history, and they rolled through the NCAA tournament, putting up 90 points in their first 5 games and winning by over 20 points per game, including the big win in the Final Four over Arizona, which I don't think anybody thought they would have won and looked as well as they did against Arizona in the Final Four against Tommy Lloyd's team. I know I didn't. Now, the title game, that was a little bit different. The shots weren't falling. They were cold. They just shot 38% from the field, 13% from the three. But championship teams adjust, and Dusty May and Michigan did exactly that. Elliot Cadeau, Merez Johnson, Yaks, they found a way to win. It wasn't pretty, but that's what separates good teams from champions. And even Dan Hurley said it best, Michigan was clearly the best team in the country from start to finish. But what does this championship do? It reinforces what Michigan is all about. Not just about being great in one sport, but striving for excellence in everything. Michigan has a chance in the Frozen Four to win a national championship in hockey as well. So we'll continue to follow that, and hopefully Michigan can bring back another national championship. That leaders are best mindset, it's real. And right now, Michigan basketball just proved that they belong in that conversation with some of the greats in any sport in the Big Ten. When you look at Michigan heading into the spring of 2026, one of the things that clearly stands out, this roster is really starting to take shape with identity, depth, and serious upside, which all Michigan fans should be extremely excited about. I haven't been this excited for a season in a long time, probably since when Jim Harbaugh first got introduced as the head coach. That's how excited I am about this coming season with Kyle Whittingham. Let's start where Michigan has always been built, and that's the run game. Even with Justice Hayes gone, the running back room is still loaded. Jordan Marshall has already shown us he can be the guy, a true Big Ten featured back who's never looked overwhelmed at times. The game has never been bigger for him. And now you add 5-star freshman Savion Hyder into this mix, and that's where things get a little scary for this running back room. This group has classic Michigan feel, physical, deep, and built to take over games late in the season. And if Hyder hits early, this could be one of the best backfields in the entire country. If not, Marshall, Cutsdale are more capable of carrying the load. We saw Bryson take over some of the load late in the season last year. But I want to talk about the biggest jump on the roster, and I have talked about this in a couple of the podcasts here on Wolverines Daily, and that is the wide receiver room. This room went from a question mark early on to, I think, being one of the strengths in a hurry, not only just through spring ball, but I think you're going to see this as a strength come fall and as the season progresses come fall. You're already looking at over 1,500 yards, double-digit touchdowns returning, and that's before factoring in elite freshmen like Salisi Moa and Travis Johnson. You add these two guys into the mix, you add Marsh into this mix, you add J.G. Buchanan and Jamie French, and this could be a very, very versatile group that has size and playmaking ability. And I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. I think where you're going to see the biggest upside with this receiver room is going to be attacking defensively vertically down the field, the deep passing game, which will set up the run game for Bryce, who's going to have the ball in his hands in crucial moments. But I also think you're going to see our third and long, our red zone offense be more efficient. And I think you're going to see us making more plays in the red zone, which will be huge. That's a major shift for this offense compared to last year. Up front, this offensive line might be the most safest group on this team. New coach Jim Harding brings a ton of credibility. More importantly, I think this group has experience back who've played a lot of snaps and they've stayed together. And I think depth at this position on the O-line could factor in late in the season with the strength, with the grind of the Big Ten schedule. This is going to be one of Michigan's groups that late in the season, I think, can be up for the Joe Moorhead Award for the best offensive line in college football. On the defensive side, the cornerbacks have stood out immediately. Jair Hill, Zeke Berry, and Utah transfer Smith Snowden. That's a trio with a lot of experience, production, and playmaking ability. I think right now the only question for me with this group is going to be depth. I think the top end is loaded with talent. It's going to be on the back end. How much depth, how much production from some of the young guys will we see heading into fall? There's a lot of production that's walked out the door. This group continues to become the biggest. Prove it for me now, unit on the field. The pieces are there, and they're putting it together, and they're going to have to put it together real fast come Big Ten play. And Michigan is starting to look like Michigan again. I've said it, and I will continue to say this. Physical in the backfield, explosive on the outside, experience up front, and if a couple of these defensive groups hit their ceiling, this team could be really, really dangerous come fall. In Michigan football, we've talked a lot about this on Wolverines Daily, is building momentum in the 2027 recruiting cycle. And right now, the foundation is really starting to look strong. Under Kyle Whittingham right now, Michigan sits inside the top 30 nationally, including number 23 on Rivals as far as recruiting goes. And what stands out early, I think it's the star power at the top and the identity across the board. Let's start with four-star edge rusher Ricardo Kitchen. This is a huge in-state win for Michigan. They beat out a lot of programs, Michigan State, Penn State, Notre Dame, A&M, and Kitchen never wavered from coming to Michigan. Even through the coaching stage, he stayed locked in, and I think that tells you everything we need to know about the recruiting and Kyle Whittingham and what they're looking at going forward. Then we have four-star safety, Darrell Madison, another big name. He's actually the first commitment of the Whittingham era, and I think he sets the tone after visiting Ann Arbor in March. He's locked in, and this is a guy who plays downhill, brings toughness, and matches the identity that they're building. I think you can see him play down as a linebacker spot, that Viper spot. He can play in the nickel. I think he can be somebody that can do a little bit of everything on the back end. And here's the ripple effect. His commitment helps spark momentum with other defensive backs that are jumping on the board at Michigan, and I think that's going to be huge for the back end of this team going forward. And I want to talk, too, about the offensive line because Michigan's always builds up front. Sidney Rolu is a name to watch. I've talked about him before on one of the podcasts, a Canadian prospect, 6'6", 260, still growing. And Jim Harding wasted no time here getting him on campus and selling the deal relatively quickly. And then you have Louis Esposito. He's a local product. This one's all about relationship close to home, strong ties to the program, and even with other visits, he stayed firm in his interest in Michigan, and that's what matters when you're building a long-term culture at Michigan. If we talk about the secondary, that's going to be where the big keys are, the big question marks, I think, going forward. Maxwell Miles out of Las Vegas is getting serious interest on the recruiting trail. He's another guy that can play all over the place. Strong pipeline, strong talent. He brings immediately, they'll get him in saying he knew on his visit that Michigan was one of the schools he was extremely interested going forward. So I think this Michigan 2027 class only is going to continue to get better, but you can already see the blueprint. Elite edge talent, physical defensive backs, high upside offensive linemen. That is Michigan football. And if they keep stacking talent like this class could really climb fast and make some serious noise nationally. I think this class has a really good chance to be top 10 when it's all said and done. And that's it for today's episode of Wolverines Daily, where your standard are set and the maize and blue stay ready. If you enjoyed today's show, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with your Michigan family, friends, and anyone who loves college football. And more than likely, Michigan football. So we'll see you tomorrow. Stay ready, stay Michigan, and as always, go blue.